Good evening to you all. I'd first like to thank Narayana Murthy for his kind remarks. Overkind, but I will not complain. Thanks very much. I begin by saying how sorry I am that Pranab Mukherjee, the President of India, whom I have the privilege of having as a friend, has been prevented by illness from coming here today. We all wish him a quick recovery. There are many different ways of achieving fame. Doing original and outstanding research that gets international recognition is perhaps the best. The winners of the Infosys Science Foundation Awards are establishing this right now. We have just heard about their wonderful achievements, and we are all very proud of the work they have done. But there are also other ways of getting fame. Sitting on a chair intended for the President of India is an easy way of getting recognition without the hardship of research. I'm in fact quite overwhelmed by the accidental fame that has suddenly come my way. I recollect another occasion when fame came to me accidentally. I was at a conference in Hanover in Germany, and I was walking back from the conference site to my hotel and stopped at a traffic light since it was red and disallowed pedestrian crossing. There was no car in sight in any direction whatever. And I decided after 100 seconds of solitude that it is extremely stupid to stand there doing nothing without even a car to watch. As Schubert Tolle will say, the part of my brain which tells me that I'm idiotic told me that I was idiotic. I thought there was even the danger of my not being counted any longer as a proper Indian if I did not take the law into my own hands when needed. Who knows, I wondered I might even lose my Indian citizenship. So I made the obvious move of crossing the street, but then a gentleman on the other side of the street expressed his displeasure at my action and told me, I quote, "Professor Sen, in Germany, a pedestrian has to wait when the light is red. This is our rule, Professor Sen," said he. I was, of course, impressed by the reprimand I was getting, but even more impressed that my fame had reached as far as Hanover to be recognized on the street. So I thought I must be nice to my distant friend and asked the critic, as affably as I could manage, "Remind me where we met last." To which the Hanoverian gentleman replied, "We have never met, and I have no clue who you are, but you are wearing your conference badge with your name on it." Name recognition can indeed be an uncertain guide to fame. However, the winners of the Infosys Science Prizes are the winners whom we are honoring today, do not need, or very soon will not need, any conference badge to be recognized. They have done altogether outstanding work, as we have just heard in the citation, and I congratulate each of them for their splendid work and their well-earned fame. I'm very proud of my association with these prizes. I've been a juror, indeed a jury chair, from the beginning of these, inception of these prizes. I remember very clearly the day when Narayana Murthy called me on the phone to invite me to work with him on this enterprise. Murthy has been such a visionary leader of so many outstanding things that have happened in India. That I knew, of course, immediately that this new project of rewarding research done in India or by Indians, though through these high-profile prizes would also be a great success, as indeed it has been. When Murthy called me, I was at the campus, in fact, at the ruins of old Nalanda, and I was engaged in planning how to combine excellent teaching with outstanding research at the newly re-established Nalanda University in the line in which the old Nalanda itself was. What Murthy was kindly inviting me to do involved the assessment of research, but implicitly it was about teaching as well. The skill of doing research, the hard preparation needed for doing new and original work, going beyond the old established knowledge, indeed the courage to think in novel and daring lines are all immensely helped by good and exciting teaching. For me personally, this began at home. My grandfather, Mohan Sen, who taught at Shantiniketan, could excite my interest in Sanskrit studies, Sanskrit was my second language, in fact, because my ability to speak English came rather slowly, and it excited my interest also in the heretical texts in Sanskrit, which still inspire my engagement in that wonderful language as I pick up a book in Sanskrit today. Sanskrit, we have to remember, and it is important in India today, is not only the language of priesthood, the language in which Hindu and many of the Buddhist texts came, it's also the vehicle, among many other radical thoughts, of comprehensive doubts about the supernatural expressed in the Lokayata text, and also the medium in which the questioning of class and caste and legitimacy of power would be expressed with spectacular eloquence by Shudraka in his profound play Mrityakartikam, Mrityakartikam meaning the little clay cart. It was great for me to be taught at a very early age the distinction between a great language as the general vehicle of thought and the specific ideas, religious or skeptical, that may be expressed in that language. That distinction, I would argue, remains important today. I also have to acknowledge my debt to my other teachers in Shantiniketan, at Presidency College, at Trinity College in Cambridge, in helping me to find my way. I'm sure the winners today would also be able to recollect, and some of them already have in their speeches, how their own preparation for original research have been facilitated by the teaching they have received. I'm delighted that in line with this understanding, the Infosys Science Foundation has initiated a new scheme for the training of rural teachers of mathematics and science. Since our school education is the basis of all our education, no matter how high our higher education may be, the fruits of investment in good school education can be extraordinarily large. Narayana Murthy, who like me grew up in a family of teachers, knows that with visionary insight. I also want to say a few things about the wider role of teaching in linking different nations and different cultures together. Teaching is not just a matter of instruction given by teachers to their individual students, that too, but more. The progress of science and of knowledge depends in general on the learning that one nation, one group of people, derives from what has been achieved by other nations and other groups of people. For example, the golden age of Indian mathematics, which changed the face of mathematics in many parts of the world, was roughly from the 5th to the 12th century. And its beginning was directly connected with, inspired by, what we Indians were learning from the work done in Babylon, Greece, and Rome. To be sure, there was an Indian tradition of analytical thinking, going back much further, on which the stellar outburst of mathematical work in India from around the 5th century drew. But we learned a lot about theorems and proofs and rigorous mathematical reasoning from the Greeks and the Romans and the Babylonians. There is no shame in learning from others and then putting what we have learned to good use and going on to create new knowledge, new understanding, and thrillingly novel ideas and results. Indians, of course, were teaching other Indians too. Perhaps the most powerful mathematician of ancient India, Brahmagupta, would not have been able to do such dazzling work without his having been influenced by the ideas of his own teacher, in particular Aryabhat, the pioneering leader of the Indian school of mathematics. Al-Biruni, the Iranian mathematician, who spent many years in India, more than 1,000 years ago, from the end of the 10th to the early years of the 11th century, and helped to make Arab mathematicians learn even more from Indian mathematics than they were already doing, taught or argued that Brahmagupta was perhaps the finest mathematician and astronomer in India and possibly in the world, and yet, argued Al-Biruni, Brahmagupta could be so productive only by standing on the shoulders of the great Aryabhat, who was not only an extraordinary scientist and mathematician, but also, through his writings, a superb teacher. Learning from each other continued over centuries, involving, in addition to Aryabhat and Brahmagupta, Varahamihir, Bhaskara, among many others. And just as Indian mathematicians learned something from Babylonian Greeks and Romans, they also taught some brilliantly new ideas to mathematicians elsewhere in the world. For example, Yi Xing, who lived in China between the 7th and the 8th century, and who was, as Joseph Needham describes him in his monumental book on the Chinese sciences, was probably the finest Chinese mathematician of his time. Yi Xing knew all the relevant Indian texts. The Chinese mathematicians, as well as the pioneering Arab mathematicians, including Al-Khwarizmi, from whose name the term algorithm is derived, all knew Sanskrit and the Sanskritic literature and maths. What we're admiring here is not Indian mathematics done in splendid isolation. That rarely occurs anywhere in the world. But mathematics done with a huge role of international and interregional exchange of ideas. Indian research was deeply influenced by the knowledge of foreign works on the subject, and in turn, Indian mathematics influenced mathematical work, even in those countries, including Greece, Rome, and Baghdad, from where Indians themselves had learned many things. Let me end with an example of these interconnections across the world. The history of the term sine in trigonometry, like sine, cosine, tan, you might remember from your school days. The history of the term sine in trigonometry illustrates how we learn from each other. That trigonometric idea was well developed by Aryabhat around 401 AD, who called it Jia Ardha, Jia being a chord, and sometimes shortened it to Jia. The Arab mathematicians, using Aryabhat's ideas profusely, called it Jiva, which is phonetically close. But Jiva is a meaningless sound in Arabic. But Jab, which has the same consonant, namely J and V, is a good Arabic word. And since the Arabic script does not specify vowels, the later generation of Arab mathematicians used the term Jab, which in fact means a bay or a cove. Then in 1150, when the Italian mathematician, Gerardo of Cremona, translated the Arabic words and the word jade into Latin. He used the Latin word sinus, which means a bay or a cove in Latin. And the Latin sinus is the origin of the modern trigonometric term sine. So in this one word, sine, we see the interconnections of three mathematical traditions, Indian, Arabic, and European. And there is no question of people standing just secluded from each other. Teaching and learning are activities that link people together. Even as we celebrate science and research, we have to recognize the role of teaching and that of learning from each other, from our teachers, from our colleagues, from our students. For me, a great source of joy when I see a former student of mine here in the former coaching bathroom, and from our from our friends and from our fellow human beings. There's something extraordinarily great in these interconnections and our ability to learn from each other. So I end by congratulating the winners of the Infosys Prize this year, and all the learning, all the teaching, and all the encouragement that lie behind their magnificent accomplishments. Thank you.